Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the course of 14th to 18th century poetry. Dear students, the topic of today's lecture is a poem by John Donne, and the title of this very poem is The Sun Rising. I am your teacher Muhammad Asif Khan, lecturer, Department of English, Cohort University of Science and Technology. The outline of today's lecture is that first of all I will introduce the poem, and then we will have a discussion on the form, rhyme scheme, speaker and setting of this very poem. After this initial discussion, we will move towards the line-by-line analysis of stanza 1, 2 and 3. So this is all about the today's lecture. Let's start from the introduction of the poem The Sun Rising. The Sun Rising basically is a poem written by John Donne, and we see that John Donne has a very wide range, and he wrote social satires, sermons, holy sonnets, elegies. He also wrote love poems, and we see a long list of poetical works throughout his lifetime. But he is perhaps best known for the similarities between his love poetry and the religious poetry. The same we see that there are a number of references in this very poem about the different contexts of religion and love, but more specifically this is a love poem. This very poem was published after his death in 1633, and this poem was published in the collection of songs and sonnets. Probably it was written sometime before when he was a young man, and in this poem the playful use of language and the extended metaphor, it exemplifies the glorious style of John Donne that we see spread all around his works, and especially the treatment of the amorous and religious aspect in the same way. So this is the speciality of the poem, and then we will move towards the detailed analysis of this poem, and there you will see that how he brings the similarities between his amorous poetry and his religious poetry. First of all, I will give you the form of this very poem. This poem does not take any specific or established form, but we see that it does have some similarities with the various versions of the sonnets. You already know that sonnet has 14 lines. Very different from that, this very poem has 30 lines, which are divided into 3 stanzas. And each stanza of this poem consists of 10 lines. However, like most sonnets, the predominant meter that is being used in this poem is iambic pentameter. And in rhyming scheme, we see that he has mixed the forms of Italian and English sonnet, and in each stanza, the end couplet resolves the question or the problem of that stanza. In the first stanza, which turns on the question whether lovers must obey the sun, ends with the couplet that declares the answer to be no. And in the same way, we see that in the second stanza that ends with the summarizing couplet, the sun should not think its beam to be respected and to have the strong impact on the whole world, because the entire world has been stolen out from under these very beams, and now it is within the room of the speaker. The third stanza finally ends with a powerful couplet that resolves the entire poem, and we see that here the poet offers the sun, that the sun can keep shining, but it should stop trying to make the speaker and lover leave the bedroom. and to do so would be beyond the scope of its authority. So this is a 30-line poem, 3 stanzas and 10 lines of each stanza. Now let's move towards the meter of this very poem. We see the meter of sun rising is not fixed, and it varies quite throughout the poem, though the spots of variation are same in each stanza. The 3rd, 4th and 7th up to 10th line in each stanza are iambic pentameters, meaning that they are composed of 5 iambs. And from iambs I mean that poetic feat which consists of an unstressed syllables followed by stressed syllables. I will just quote one example of the 7th line. First of all, I will read the complete line, and then I will give you how we can divide this line into feats. Go tell court huntsmen that the king will ride. And if we divide it into 5 iambs, we will say this line like this: go tell court hunts men that the king will ride. In this way, we can divide this line into 5 iambs. Iambic pentameter is one of the most common format meter that we find in the traditional verse forms, such as the sonnets. Although the poem does not take any particular traditional form, but Donne uses iambic pentameter just to demonstrate this very thing, that he is a skilled and practiced poet. The 2nd line in each stanza is diameter, just 2 feet per line, compared to the pentameter 5. Like the 2nd line, you can see that, why dost thou thus? It has 2 feet. So the poem is hardly consistent in its use of iambs. However, these departure from the standard meter of the poem are not poetic failures, rather it is being done purposefully. So you can see that all these variations are being done purposefully. So line 1, 5 and 6 are meter in iambic tetrameter. Line 2 is in diameter, and line 3, 4 and 7 up to line 10 are in pentameter. If we look at the rhyme scheme, each stanza is AB, BA, CD, CD, EE. We can divide this very stanza into 2 quatrains and the last couplet. First quatrain rhymes AB, BA. The 2nd quatrain rhymes CD, CD. And the last couplet rhymes EE. So this is the rhyming scheme. And I have also given you the meter of this very poem. Now let's move towards the speaker of this poem. The speaker of sun rising is never named or gendered in this very poem, but via context we can intend that he is a man. This man wants to remain in bed all day with his lover, but the sun is getting in the way, and that is rudely shining through the drawn bedroom curtains. The speaker's goal is to reduce or damage sun's ego or pride, or he wants to humiliate it. We see that as the poem goes on, it becomes clear that by letting down the sun's ego, the speaker also wants to elevate his own authority. And we feel that the speaker does not reveal much about his social status, but he is probably very well off because he is still lying on the bed and the sun has risen He also seems more worried about the social expectations of the productivity instead of about the actual earnings or about money or food. So he is not worried about these things, and this shows that he is a well-off person. So it is thus not through the social ranks that the speaker is desperate to rise. In fact, he claims early on to be more powerful already than a king. Later he even goes so far as to say that the princes do not but play us. They are just copying these lovers. So instead of social power, the speaker is after the kind of cosmological power that the sun holds over the entire universe. So as the sun rises, the speaker wants to rise even higher than that. This is the speaker, and we also analyzed the intentions of this speaker, that what is the motto, what he wants to achieve in his life. Now let's see the setting of this very poem. And the setting of the sun rising is a bedroom, and cultural references in the first stanza, such as schoolboys, sore apprentices, or court huntsmen, king or country ants, or rural farmers, supports the idea that the bedroom that the poet is mentioning here, that is located in the Renaissance England. And a reference in the second stanza to the Indias of spices and mines situates the bedroom globally far away from both the East Indies and West Indies. So we can guess this very thing, that this very place about which the poet is talking, or the bedroom where the speaker and his lover is lying, that very place is situated far away from both East Indies and West Indies. It seems that this part of the poem also situates the speaker within a colonial culture that is actually profiting from the exploitation of the East Indies and West Indies. And it also supports the idea that this very room is located in the England, or at least this room is situated in the Europe. However, we see that speaker wants to cut short or trim away all this context, and he is making the bedroom an entire universe. He is trying to link this very thing. The speaker wants to link his bedroom to entire universe. So this is the setting of this very poem. Now let's move towards the line by line analysis of this poem. First of all, I will read the lines, and then I will explain these lines to you. First three lines of this poem. Busy old fool, unruly sun, why dost thou thus, through windows and through curtains, call on us? The poem grabs us by insulting us by these words, busy old fool, or he is insulting someone else, whoever he is insulting. But in the very beginning of this poem, he starts with insulting someone. But it is hard to tell that who he is insulting. But fortunately, this very wait is not too long. And in the next very phrase, the poet tells us that he is talking to the sun. So here he is personifying the sun, and we have apostrophe. Apostrophe is basically addressing some inanimate thing. So he is talking to sun, and in this way one literary device is that he is personifying sun, and the second thing is that he is apostrophizing sun. He is addressing directly the sun. So busy old fool, unruly sun. Now we see that another thing, that he also sets up a very arrogant tone. That very tone continues throughout the poem. And the first half of the first line makes the son sound like some bad-tempered old man. But then immediately we see that the poet changes the image. He calls the son unruly, as if it were a child or a pet that is misbehaving. So the second line shows us that this is a question. Why dost thou thus? But it is not the question which the son is supposed to answer. You can roughly translate this very question into these words, like why are you like this? Or why do you behave like this? So this is the normal translation of this word. And we see that in the next line, seeing the sunlight coming through the windows and curtains, he basically says this very thing that, "Oh fool and dumb son, why do you do these things? And why you are peeping through the windows and curtains, and you are disturbing their blissful night." So basically the son has interrupted that blissful night of the speaker, and therefore he is angry with son and he is calling him an old fool, unruly son. So in this way the poet opens the poem. Now let's see the next three lines. Must to thy motion lovers' seasons run? Another question, and these are the rhetorical questions. Must to thy motions lovers' season run? Saucy, pedantic, rash, go chide, late school boys and sore apprentices. Donne questions here to the son that do lovers like us really have to get up just because you started your daily routine? So this is the question that the poet is asking to the son. But of course it is a very harsh question. We could translate it more like this, that did you really expect my lady and I to get up just because you shine in here? Only 2 lines ago the son was unruly child. But in line 5 we see that Donne changed the metaphor, and the son is now saucy, pedantic, rash. So this new image extends that question in line 4. It may have some power over some people, but definitely not over these lovers. So the speaker is saying that we are not going to admit the powers, and we are not going to subdue our powers. We are not going to submit in front of the sun. We are not from them. We are not going to follow the seasons or the routines you have set. So they are not going to follow the daily routine, which is totally based on the path being set by the sun. Here Donne uses an imperative verb, go chide, and he is not just chatting with the sun. He is actually ordering or bossing it, and he commands it to go away and bother others. And he is treating others as lesser people. So in the next 3 lines, he gives the example of these very people. The sun still has some powers over those people, and these lesser people include the late school boys and the gloomy apprentices who are running to their job and making their way to work. And in the coming lines, the poet is referring about the servants of loyalty and the working class folk. Apprentices is a short form being used by the poet for apprentices. This would have been teenage kids who are learning craft from a skilled worker. These very people are called apprentices. In the line 7 and 8, we see that go tell court's huntsmen that the king will ride. Call country ants to harvest offices. The verb changes in line 7 from chiding the kids, and here he is saying to tell the adults. This is another indication that he is moving up the scale of humanity. This deliberate distinction between the social classes has to do with the Renaissance beliefs that has a very established belief about the great chain of being. That is the notion that everything in the creation has specific and determined rank in the eyes of the God. So you start down at the bottom with the rocks and move all up through the people, kings, angels, and in the top hierarchy we see God is there. So there is a great chain of being that was believed in the Renaissance time period, and here he is hinting toward that. And first we see that he used the word chide for the lesser people, and then for distincting the lesser beings from the adults, he is using the different verbs. That creates a special impact. The reference to king calling his huntsmen is an allusion here, because at that time King James first was reigning England, and he was known to love riding and hunting. So here we have one allusion to the King James. Actually, we are already in complex metaphor. It is not a simple metaphor. It is extended metaphor about the sun, and the sun is telling the people what to do, and the poet goes ahead and he gives a mini metaphor in line 8, and here he is referring peasants or farmers as country ants. In doing so, he is basically reminding us that he and his lover are above such people, and they belong to higher ranks, because they are not worried about these daily routines. By the way, in the context here, offices does not just mean the workspace that is provided in the organization. It means a duty or responsibility. So call country ants to harvest offices means to fulfill their duties. And ants, country ants is referring to the peasants or the farmers. Now let's move to the line 9 and 10, and in this way the first stanza will end. Love all alike, no season knows. Love all alike, no season knows, nor clime, nor hours, days, months, which are the rags of time. In line 9, with all its commas and unusual syntax, it is like a puzzle. At the most basic level, we see Donne is saying that love does not change with seasons or climates. The little phrase, all alike, this very phrase describes love, and it means that it is always same. And in the 10th line, we see a long list of the words, and Donne is famous for his lists. When he starts getting very excited, he tends to turn towards lists to express his emotions. He does the same thing in other poems also, like for example, one of the poem which is included in our syllabus, that is Death Be Not Proud. So here we see a list, hours, days, months, and this very list repeats the consistency of the time and shows the steadfastness of his love. So here he is comparing the consistency of the time, and then he is showing the steadfastness or the strength of his love. Again, he has listed these very different moments of the time into an order that goes from smallest to the largest, And in this way, he is again alluding to the great chain of being, because that very chain is mentally there in his mind. So the final metaphor is very catchy, rags of time. By referring to hours, days and months as rag of time, he is contrasting them with the eternity, and we assume that he is referring to his eternal love for his beloved. So it is a clever way to talk big or show off, and the poet says that hours and days and months may pass, but my love for my beloved will never die. It is eternal, it is infinite, it is never dying. Now let's move towards the next stanza. And in this stanza, the poet says, "Thy beams so reverent and strong, why shouldest thou think I could eclipse and cloud them with a wink? But what though I would not lose her sight so long?" So again here the poet is referring or alluding to a religious belief that stars and planets were holy things in Christianity, because at least they are closer to the God, and God is the prime mover who set everything into motion. So there is the holy feelings for these very stars and planets. And the poet has used this very word reverend in line 11 when he is describing the sunbeams. Donne also hints the knowledge of recent scientific discoveries in talking of sunbeams, because it was a recent idea that humans they saw objects because of the light that is cast on them. But then Donne reverse our expectations and mocks the sun again, because when we read the first line, it looks like as if he was saying something nice there in the line 11, but the line 12 reveals the verb, and it also gives us the rest of the question. It means that why would anyone think that thy being so reverend and strong might be? So the question is like a hypothetical proposition that needs a proof. And John Donne was a lawyer, and like any good attorney, we see Donne is ready to prove his case. And he is asking him that why should I respect you? So why do I dare to insult the sun? Says line 13, because if I just close my eyes, then all those sunbeams disappear. So in this way he dares to insult the sun, because by just closing or winking his eye, all these sunbeams disappear. So his argument is really clear. So he boasts, he makes himself greater than the sun, because his eyes can eclipse and cloud the sunbeams. So here the poet is boasting. And in line 14, the poet reminds us that this is a love poem. It is like when a lover is trying to defend a girl's honor by standing up to some strong villain. It feels like this. And in line 14, Donne leaves off the attack of the sun to say something sweet. And maybe a little cheap thing is there. He says that he could eclipse the sun with a wink, but if he did so, he would have to take his eyes off his beloved. And he just does not know if he could do that. So he is not ready to take his eyes off his beloved, and for that reason he is not winking, or he is not closing his eyes, and for that reason he is not eclipsing or clouding the sunbeams. So though it's a cheap idea, but he has included this very idea here in this poem. Now let's move towards the next 4 lines, and there we can read these very lines like this. if her eyes have not blinded thine. Look, and tomorrow late tell me, whether both the Indias of spices and mine be where thou left'st them, or lie here with me. So in line 15 there is a paradox. He tells the sun that if the beauty of his lover's eye has not blinded thy eyes, then the sun should take a look around. The first thing is that we are sure about the sun's eyes. It is a kind of a weird metaphor. Second thing is that, do you really want someone to take one look at your girlfriend and that person suffers blindness? Do you like such type of girlfriend? That once a person, he just have a look at your girlfriend and he just turns into a blind person. No, so that is a paradox being used by the poet here. And in fact, he says that just as the sun is so bright and the sun is so radiant that when one look at the sun, that can blind you, even the sun can be blinded by the brightness and beauty of his lover's eyes. So the poet is still commanding the sun, and he is ordering it that look, and tomorrow late tell me. So here the speaker is, or the poet is, ordering and commanding the sun. But he now claims that if the sun were to go look around the world, it would find that everything now resides inside this one bedroom where they are. Actually, he is exaggerating, and the whole world had just collapsed into a single room where these two lovers are residing. But we see another references here, and the poet mentions India in line 17, and he refers to the two Indias. The one is in the east and the other is in the west. Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492, and Vasco da Gama discovered the sea route to the subcontinent or the India in 1497. So he is referring to these two events in his poem. The East India was a broad term for the entire this subcontinent where we are living, and it was the golden sparrow in the eyes of traders, and for the poet it was very valuable because it has unusual spices. On the other hand, we see the West Indies where the newly discovered Caribbean islands that were thought to be rich mining opportunity. So it is almost as if Donne is playing trick on the sun, showing off his power over it, and telling him, you go around the world and look at the things that you have seen last day. All these things lie here within my bed. After that, we see in line 19 and 20, the poet says, ask for those kings whom thou saw'st yesterday, and thou shalt hear all here in one bed lay. The narrator commands the sun to check up on its kingdom. In line 16 also, he told the sun to tell him tomorrow what he saw. In line 19 also, he tells the sun to remember the kings he saw only yesterday. And he is saying, now you see them, now you don't. One day you see them, and on the second day they will not be there. Donne has also activated the senses. In the previous example, Donne commands the sun to look with its eyes, and here his command is for the sun to ask around and hear what is going on. Here he is saying to hear the things. Poets like to shake up its sensory images. So here is a weird part of the metaphor. He repeats the same claim he had before about the Indias, that all the kings of the world can now be found in this bed. Now let's move towards the last stanza. She is all states and all princes I. Nothing else is. Princes do but play us. Compared to this, all honors mimic, all wealth alchemy. Line 21 contains two simple metaphors. First, he equates his lover with all countries. Second, he compares himself to all rulers. In the previous two stanzas, they set up metaphysical questions, but in the final stanza, this short line makes a bold and blunt announcement. Nothing else is. So nothing else in the entire world exists except for the speaker and his lover. So Donne is coming with self-importance, and he gives three examples of the fakeness of the world as compared to the reality of himself and his friend. To him, all princes are big fakers or frauds. They are just pretending like them. And the second example of the fakeness is that all honor is only simple mimicry. And the last thing is that all wealth that is there in the world, that is just alchemy. Anyone claiming to have found the secret to alchemy was like thought of a cheat artist. It was the change in the belief at that time. In lines 25 to 28, the poet says, "Thou, sun, art half as happy as we. In that the world's contracted thus, thine age asks ease, and since thy duties be to warm the world, that is done in warming us." In line number 25, we see that the poet returns to the use of apostrophe, and he is addressing the sun. Donne is directly talking to the sun, and it also grows more bold in its claim. And he is saying the sun is half as happy as Donne is, or the speaker is. Usually the sun is seen as pretty well and a happy thing in the Europe because of its warmth, because most of the time of the year there is a cold season in England, and sun is the symbol of happiness. But the poet is claiming that the sun is half happy than these two lovers. So it is a bold way to say that someone could be twice happy as sun is. So why are they happy? In line number 26, the poet tells us that it is because the whole world has been contracted into their bedroom. When the sun comes up for everyone else, they have to get busy and run to the work. But now that the world has collapsed for Donne and his lady, they are free to relax in their bedroom for all the day. That is their world. So by the time Donne acts as if he has made the world actually shrink, and he says thus, as if by claiming the world has contracted in the previous stanza, it is now plain fact that the world has contracted, and therefore he has used the word thus. Remember back in the very first line, Donne called the sun busy old fool. Now here again he is returning back to that label in the very end of this poem, and he mocks the sun with a very sympathetic tone, and he tells the sun in line 27 that the sun is weak old age, and that age demands that sun takes it easy. So line 27 also brings back the idea that the sun being busy, and sun's duties includes warming up the whole world. So he uses the metaphor and says if the whole world is here in this room, then the sun can linger right here and still do its job. In line number 22, we have the hint that the poet says, by warming Donne, or by warming the poet or the speaker, you are all done. The son has done his duty, completed or fulfilled his duty. The last two lines of this poem are shine here to us, and thou art everywhere. This bed thy center is, these walls thy sphere. The last two lines of the poem are really about summing up the argument and leaving us with a new and a strange picture of these two lovers in the bed. And we see that we began this poem with Donne asking the son to go and bother someone else. And now in the end of this poem, he is commanding, or he is pleading the son to stay and only shine on them. But still we see that poet sings his own praises, or he is boasting here that, "O son, you are old, you have to keep earth warm, it's your duty, and we are the entire world. So you should not worry, take it easy. To make your job easier, I am inviting you to our room. So shine on our bed, that way this will become your solar system, and you will revolve around us, and in this way you will fulfill your duty. So shine here to us, thou you will shine everywhere. This bed will be your center, and within the sphere of this room, within these walls, you have to perform your duty." So now we are ending this poem. Today we have studied the sun rising, and I hope that now you will be clear about this poem. Thank you very much for listening passionately. Allah Hafiz.